This episode discusses a school shooting, loss of life, and trauma. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. On February 10th, 2026, it was a typical peaceful day in the stunningly beautiful Tumbler Ridge, a tiny and remote mountain town in British Columbia, Canada. Shortly after lunch, the worst school shooting in Canadian history happened at their only secondary school. A lone shooter took the lives of 8 people and seriously injured 2 others, including Maya Gabala, 12 years old, who continues to recover in hospital. The shooter first took the lives of their mother and brother at home. Emmett Jacobs, 11 years old. Jennifer Jacobs, 39 years old. Then they continued to the school where in only minutes, students, teachers, and assistants were targeted before the shooter took their own life. The lives of Shananda Aviaganda Durant, 39 years old. Zoe Benoit, 12 years old. Takaria Lampert, 12 years old. Abel Mawansa, 12 years old. Ezekiel Schofield, 13 years old. And Kylie Smith, 12 years old, were all taken, and a town was on lockdown. It would be several hours before RCMP backup arrived to discover what happened and piece together the crime scene. Anyone who has ever been to Tumbler Ridge will know how peaceful, serene, and spectacular the views are. The incredible surroundings of the mountains, rivers, lakes, and trails are matched by the people of the community who are peaceful, helpful, and friendly beyond what you'll experience in many Canadian towns. Trent Ernst is the publisher of the Tumbler RidgeLines, a weekly newspaper and digital platform which keeps up on news in the area, including communities 2 hours away such as Chetwynd, Dawson Creek, and Grand Prairie. And in typical small-town reality, Trent also provides services to the community as photographer, graphic designer, and he even serves as the campsite attendant at the Lions Campground, where I met him. I'm your host, Tim Conrad. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Wildfires, Floods, and Chaos Communications podcast with guest Trent Ernst, as he describes the first moments on that day.
A friend posted online or sent a message saying, "Sounds like something's up at the school." And you know, there's always something up at the school. There's misidentifications, there's emergency tests, there's all this sort of stuff. But I decided, well, I'll go check it out. So I drove down to the school, and a friend of mine was parked there, and he was like, "I don't know what's happening. My kids are there. I'm worried." Right? And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I knew right away that it was, well, I mean, that it was something more than just, oh, somebody walked into school with a stick in their backpack and somebody thought it was a gun, right? Yeah. That's kind of the normal level. But at the same time, I thought maybe somebody had gone in there brandishing a gun. Maybe somebody had gone in, fired a few shots in the air. I wasn't expecting anything really serious. Yep. And it was just like, so I got there, and just as I was about to hit go on a live stream, because I decided I would live stream it, there was this emergency alert that went out, and it was like active shooter, somebody wearing a dress, and that was basically all the information I had. So I got out there and was like, I was kind of standing outside of the school grounds because I knew that they yell at me if I as a reporter, if I enter the school grounds. There is a report of an active shooter at the Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. As I was just about to go live, 2 cop cars just came zooming by towards the school, and a emergency alert went out. So this is not a rumor. Very little is known about the situation right now. I'm going to get out of my car, turn it off. Other than there's a report of a female with brown hair in a dress. And rumors are that she has a gun. Or not rumors, but reports are. These are the reports from the emergency alert system. So it feels like either what's happening is farther in, or that something is, or that whatever was happening is over. And I was there for, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 minutes. And then I got a call from the school district saying, hey, the alert said, shelter in place, you shouldn't be out there. And I was like, thanks, but this is my job, right? So I'm basically, I'm not that worried about an active shooter because the cops are right there, and I have line of sight for 200, 300 meters around me, so I'm not that worried. So then I tried to go back to live streaming, and I realized that I was just using my phone because I was just expecting, whatever. But I realized my phone was almost dead. So I stopped and I went home. I heard that there had been the RCMP were also looking at this other house. So I went by there, took a picture, went home, and started just live streaming from my computer, sort of thinking, well, okay, it seems like something more than somebody misidentified, because it's bigger news. And then we did that for a couple hours, and then the news came out that there were people dead, and it was just like the bottom fell out. The world suddenly just sort of went and changed, because Tumbler Ridge is not the sort of place where that sort of thing is supposed to happen. I keep telling stories about how when the Luke Magnatta incident happened in Montreal, my big story that week was, oh, here's a mama duck and her baby ducklings walking through downtown, right? And I wrote in my editorial, this is why I love Tumbler Ridge. Other newspapers, their concern is if it bleeds, it leads. I don't want that. It's a newspaper, but it's the community side of that is equally or more important than the news part of it, right? So if you go to like a big paper like the Vancouver Sun or the Edmonton Journal, they sort of treat that sort of the feature writing and the human interest stuff as sort of the lesser news, the lower news. But for me, that's kind of the stuff that's really, really important, because that's about people. That's about who we are as individuals and as a community.
We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous people on whose ancestral territories we work and play, whether the land is unceded or ceded. Your relationship with this land and your culture is one we admire wherever we are. We are committed to truth and reconciliation through regular, meaningful actions.
Can you tell me a little bit, just talk about Tumbler Ridge? You've been here for decades. I've known of you from my time living in Grand Prairie. We never had any interactions because I didn't do work here, but I certainly followed your work and the news that you provided, and you also do a lot of other services too. But tell me about Tumbler Ridge and what it's kind of like here in a typical day through that time of year.
6 months ago.
Yeah. Right.
So Tumbler Ridge is it's a mining town that's trying not to be a mining town anymore. We've got one mine here. There's a mine halfway between here and Chetwynd where some people work, and so you've got a couple hundred people who work at the mine. So that provides a large chunk of the employment, and then. But there's also there had been mines here back in the 80s and 90s, and then in 2000, one of them closed.
Yeah.
Right, and it put 500 people out of work. 2-3 years later, the other mine went out, and so there was like the reason for the town to exist was no longer there.
Yeah.
At least that's what an outsider observer would have said.
Yeah.
There's Tumbler Ridge, it's a mining town, no more mines, therefore, pack up, move on, let the town become just another ghost town in BC, right?
Yeah.
Become the next Braylorn or the next gold creek or the next, right? But people had been here for like since the early 80s, and they discovered that it wasn't just another stop on the mining merry-go-round, that this was home, right? And there were a couple of reasons for that. One, they put a lot of work when they built the town into making it a very strong community focus. Like the way the town is laid out is, you know, people look at it and go, that's weird, that's crazy, but it was designed to prevent crime. It was designed for crime prevention, right? And there was a lot of effort put into, you know, community organizations. There were rodeos in the early days. There was a community center. There was all these activities. The mines would have just these epic summer picnic barbecues, get all the kids out, just have fun. And so it became home. And so when the mines closed down, a bunch of people said, "This is home. We're not moving." And we want to see the town survive. So there's a housing sale. You know, you could pick up a house for $30,000, which was, I mean, for me, who was a struggling feature writer, that was something that was like, wow, I can afford a house for 1/10 of what you'd get it for down in the Lower Mainland, and you know, a lot less now. So I moved up here and because I'd been here like in the 80s just working, and I loved. So the first time I was up here, I went out to Canoso Falls, which was at the time the big thing that you wanted to see. But this was before they had built the road in. So they'd done logging back there in the 1950s. And so there was this old road that you could get in on with a four-wheel drive. The bridges were out on the creek, so you had 4 or 5 crossings. So you could only go when the water was down. And I got there, and we walked down to the base of the falls, and I was from Saskatchewan. And I looked up at this waterfall, and I was like, this is quite possibly the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And when I left, instead of following the path up, I decided to take this, just kind of go into the bush and walk up kind of between the waterfall and the path. And I would take a step, and it was, you know, it was really steep. So I'd take a step, I'd sit there and breathe. But I would look down at where I was standing and go, right here, have there ever been any feet that ever have touched this patch of ground ever in the history of existence? And for somebody from Saskatchewan, where like 90% of the province, at least south of Prince Albert, has been, you know, farmed and you know, plowed up and planted and seeded, that was just such a heady revelation. Right. And so I just fell in love with the place. So when I had the chance to come back, I took it. And you know, it hasn't been easy because, you know, I'm a writer, and they were looking for miners, and that's not what you do as a writer. But I managed, you know, I was doing a lot of freelance stuff, and I managed to survive. And my wife was working at a bunch of different places, and you know, so we made it work. Anyways, so that doesn't really answer your question about what Tumbler Ridge is, you know, what the day-to-day life is. But that kind of gives you a sense of sort of the dichotomy of it. You've got people here who come here who are just looking to work. They spend 7 days working, they go home for 7 days, and it's just a job. But then you have this group of people who are passionate about Tumbler Ridge, who love the place, who love the community, and who love just this, right? They love the nature. Right? We're kind of one of the right on the edge of an area that had never been really explored.
That's right.
Right. So you kind of go west from here, and you know that there's been First Nations in this area for centuries, and that there's been explorers and trappers, but there were not a lot of signs of settlement and development. So so you've got kind of those two groups that live here, and you know, and then you got just the people who are, you know, followed their spouse or but it's not a very active town, right? It's not a I've always wanted to do a thing about like, okay, it's rush hour in Tumbler Ridge, and we're sitting here at the, the corner of Main Street and Monkman Way, and we're sitting here, and yeah, we don't have any traffic yet, but we'll let you know when it comes by. All right, here we go. Okay, I've been here for a couple minutes. Oh, I think I see it. No, it's not turning down here, so it's not coming into downtown. But right, so it's very
so
slow.
Perfect.
And so there's the good side of that, but there's also drawbacks, right? There's you run out of milk at 8 o'clock at night.
Yep.
There's no place to get milk.
Yeah, that's right.
But so you have people who just kind of love it here, who live here, who enjoy it. For myself, I'm always I try and get 5 kilometers of walking in, and trying not to follow the same trail all the time, because there's just so many little deer paths and ATV trails and bike paths and that you can just kind of go along. Like right now, there's a trail right beside us that, if we follow it that way, it goes 8 kilometers one way. If we follow it that way, it goes 11 kilometers the other.
Yeah.
Right. And you can just sort of, you can just always explore both in the grand sense of like climbing to the tops of mountains, and in the micro sense where you're sort of, going, oh look, here's this flower I've never seen, or this tree is doing something that I've never noticed before.
Yeah. Or there's just some dinosaur foot tracks across some rock in a random location.
One, I know this is kind of off topic, but one of my first jobs when I moved here was actually we were building trails.
Yeah.
And just upstream here, there's a place called Cabin Pool, which is where they found the original dinosaur trap. And so they wanted us to build a trail down to there. So we got out there, we built the trail. And we we finished building the trail, and that summer there was a flood, and it came up and it washed all this debris and stuff up and onto this big rock that was kind of across the river from where the dinosaur tracks are, and the the boss was sort of like, well, can we clean that off? It's like, okay, well. I'm like sitting there throwing all the trash into there. I take a broom and I'm sweeping it. And I'm sitting there cursing it because it's like there's all these stupid indents in the rock that the dirt would get caught in. And literally 3 weeks later, some guy went down there and he's like, does that look like a dinosaur footprint to you? and that. And it turns out it's like the largest collection of dinosaur tracks in North America.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I can't say that I discovered it, but I can say that I uncovered it.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah, and it's I think that's I want for people to understand that Tumbler Ridge is this. I've told people it's the best hidden secret you will find probably anywhere in Canada. It is a stunningly beautiful and fairly untouched spot.
Yeah.
And there's the things that you can do here, like going to see dinosaur foot tracks, particularly the lantern tour, is an unreal experience. To me, if it's not on your bucket list, it needs to be. And going out, there's so many waterfalls here. You mentioned Canuso, like an unreal spectacular waterfall that is, really kind of compares to Niagara Falls in my view, and yet it's tucked into this wild nature. And then just gorgeous trails, like unreal trails that you can do there, and there's just so much. There's so much. Like when you're coming out on the road, you always meet vehicles, and what they've got on them, it just shows you that the absolute breadth of recreation that happens in the area. And it's a remarkable spot.
Yeah, I mean, if your thing is going to the movies every weekend and going shopping, this isn't the place. But if it's going out and spending time in nature, if it's going downtown to just pick up a jug of milk and spending half an hour because you keep bumping into people that you know and want to talk to, then this is an amazing place.
Yeah.
Cannot provide any information at the moment as to specifics other than what was announced on the alert earlier. I do have a call into RCMP media relations, but they're out of Prince George. Right, here we are.
You know, you had that first day of things after the shooting, and it rolls. Then you start to see an influx. So tell me about that influx that comes in and what that experience was like.
Yeah, so I spent the next, basically the 24 hours after that, a lot of it was sort of doing media interviews, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, the BBC is not going to be able to get somebody on site within, 12, 24 hours.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, just dealing with media. But, it got to a point where they were like, so what's happening now? I'm like, honestly, I don't know, because I have not left my office, basically.
Yeah.
So I started to, sort of went, okay, now the media is coming in, and you can get stuff from them. You can talk to other people. I need to go out and do reporting. I need to be with my town.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the community center had became sort of the healing hub. Mm-hmm. So there were 10 or so counselors who kind of took over part of the space. The victim services were there. There were a couple emotional support animals like dogs that were there.
Yeah.
And it was sort of this weird tension, because they're like, well, media is not allowed in here, but you're local, so just don't be media.
Yeah.
And so it was wild, because I walked into the library, which is part of the community center, and there was a bunch of people who worked there were standing there going, oh, there's another reporter. You can tell because they're all wearing the puffy jackets.
Yeah.
And there were reporters that were doing a really, really good job. They were decent, they were respectful, but there were reporters who would see like a 10-year-old kid wandering down the street, and they'd get up into the kid's face and go like, tell me what happened, who are you, what's your, right? It's like, you're a 10-year-old kid. These are not people who have the ability to, legally, right, to say, yes, you can interview me, or no, you cannot, right?
Yeah.
They're underage, so you need to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
And there were some reprehensible sort of things like that. Apparently, there was after 3 days after the shooting, the Safer Schools had kind of found everybody's cell phones and personal effects and brought it down to the local the golf course.
Yeah.
To hand it out to people. And apparently there were media kind of pretending to be parents standing in line, sort of going, wow, that was just sort of a really weird thing. Oh yeah, no, what did you just say? Talk a little louder and into the lapel, right?
Yeah.
And
wow.
So there's a bit of a anti-media backlash that has sparked up. But it was also amazing, just the way that the community pulled together.
Yeah.
I've told this story many times, but after COVID, I'm not naturally a social person.
Yeah.
And after COVID, that kind of really pushed me sort of into my own little shell, like to a point where, people would go, hi. Yeah. And I'd be like, and just sort of, and then they'd awkwardly put their hand down because I'd be like,
Yeah.
I physical contact. That's not something I do,
Yeah.
right? But then after this, I had a friend who's in a band with me, and were having some custodial issues. They were trying to figure out custody, and so they went and stayed with this family I know, and he was just devastated. So I was like, went up to him, gave him a big hug, and he sent me a note saying, because he's a hugger, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I've hugged so many people, but that one meant a lot. So, and it helped me. It helped me sort of, there again after COVID, I kind of did this and kind of closed in on myself.
Yeah.
And when this happened, I kind of looked up and went, oh yeah, there's a community here. There's people that I care about who are hurting, and I'm not very good at showing how I care and how much I care, but I do care. So, stop sitting there staring at your own belly button and go out there and talk to people and give people hugs and shake people's hands.
Yeah.
Mental well-being is something we all have a responsibility to ourselves to be aware of and to look for ways to improve through intentional actions, such as getting outside or seeking professional help. As a responder, consider taking mental health first aid, which has been very important for the work I do, interacting with people during large emergencies, from residents to responders. If you are in urgent need of help in Canada, dial or text 988. You deserve to be heard. They are there to listen. It is a safe spot to talk 24 hours a day, every day of the year.
It became a little unfriendly for the media because of the way they were acting. How was the community towards you then? Because you were known in this community. You've been here for a really long time. So how was that reaction then? Did you get stuck in the middle of it?
No, I don't think so. But I mean, the other thing for me, when I see media behaving badly, what I do is I if I see people going like this, I back off. If I see people behaving badly, I go for my best behavior. So I basically, what I was hoping to do was I was hoping in the library there's a little pot, and I was hoping to establish that as sort of a Vatican City.
Yeah.
And say, look, what I want to do is I want to set up just in here, and if people want to come and talk and tell their stories, then allow them to do that. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I did, but like I said, I really didn't want to be like in people's face. I was like, if you want to talk to me, you come talk to me, and because there's enough stuff happening, on the level RCMP, emergency services, politics, all those other things that there's enough to tell a story. At the same time, there were stories that I would have loved to have told, or would have loved to have been. I would have counted it a blessing to have heard these people's stories, but that's not my decision to make. That's their decision to make.
Yeah. And on that note, you mentioned, like we were chatting earlier, you've mentioned different names, family members of the victims, different people in town that are very much impacted or involved with it. I sensed when you said that, like how many people live in Tumbler Ridge? It's
2,500.
2,500, right? So everybody knows everybody, right?
Yeah.
I think that's safe to say. Obviously there's some people coming and going that are workers when you're in a mining world. But the people that are here that have chosen to stay in this community, you know them, right? I think you get to know people, you bump into them in the grocery store or whatever, because it is a very small little town.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so spectacular as well. So talk to me about how those relationships, what those meant as you went through this event.
When looked up and went, oh yeah, these are people that are hurting. Again, I'm a newspaper reporter, so newspaper reporters are supposed to be sort of above and outside, but yet this is my community, so I'm part of and
Yeah.
on the inside. So, I'm just gonna put the camera down, and I bumped into somebody who I haven't seen for a few months, and was just driving through the campsite, and I was like, we got talking, and within 5 minutes, it turned the conversation turned to what happened, right? And that's just the way it goes. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's an unfortunate part that it will be part of Tumbler Ridge's story. I think, though, as time goes, I think we'll see Tumbler Ridge shine through again, and because it is such a remarkable place, and I think it does. I was amazed with some of the parents of some of the victims, and those that have even survived, in how they've really stood up to say like that they want to make sure that we move on in a really good way from this, and to really show. I think it's really shown to me all that magic that we saw in Tumbler Ridge, I think the magic is not just in the gorgeousness that you're surrounded in, but it's the people. It's the people that are here. We loved our interactions with everyone every time we came here. So tell me a little bit about that, like, and what the people bring.
So one of the emails that I got that I remember was one of the reporters who was working in Fort Mac.
Yeah.
And he sent me a note saying, I wish all the best for you, but but after just know that after Fort Mac happened, there was a lot of issues that kind of came to the surface. Like, there was people, there was higher rates of spousal abuse, higher rates of alcoholism, higher rates of, just these domestic issues, as people tried and failed to deal with what had happened. And that's really been kind of my guiding light, both as a reporter, but also as a community member, is to do whatever I can to prevent this town from falling into the pit.
Yeah.
To prevent it from embracing the darkness. Because when there's tragedy, right, our first instinct is to cuddle up. It's to protect ourselves. It's to stay away from people. And there's some good that comes out of that, but there's also a lot of good that comes out of being able to interact with people and say, you know what, I'm not doing all right. My bass player that I was talking about, when I was talking to him, and he said, I feel like a shittier version of me. I think back to that day. He was, like I say, he was out sitting on the road where I was reporting from, kind of trying to get in contact with his kids. But he says that when he closes his eyes, this was a couple weeks ago, but he said when he would close his eyes, he would be there. He would be in the school. He would just kind of keep reliving that over and over, even though he wasn't a part of it.
Yeah.
And so, what I can do to help make his life better, what I can do to help make anybody's life better, and to avoid, because I don't want to hear about, people, beating their spouses and stuff after this. I want to hear about people who are grieving, but who are able to walk through that grief in a way that's not harmful.
Yeah.
In a way that they can come out the other side changed, but at the very least being as good as they were before, if not better.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I certainly, I always encourage people, like, to get to counseling, to really take walk through the door and pick up the phone and call for the service that can help you get through things, and talk it out. One of the, like, I have been through trauma, so I know what it's like, and one of the things that's nice when you go to a professional, whether it's a counselor or whoever you're going to go to, you can say whatever you want to that person.
Yeah.
That's their job, is to listen to that. And I think that was the nicest thing for me, was like, it was a safe space to say whatever was whatever was coming out of my heart and my mind, and so I think that's I want to commend you, because I noticed when I looked the stories that you've been doing, you're talking about those sorts of things, and you are bringing them up and making them part of this story, and starting to weave that in so that people don't feel alone, I guess, you know? So
Yeah, well, one of the things that I really wanted to do was find somebody, like I wanted to find the world's leading expert in trauma counseling, and found one of Canada's leading experts in trauma counseling.
Yeah.
But what she's doing is she's writing a story for the paper every week. Right now she's just walking through the 7 stages of grief.
yeah,
But as part of that, I'm also doing an interview with her. The paper is bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks I'll sit down and talk to her, and I'll just have people come in, ask questions, just, say, this is how I'm feeling. Well, okay, here's some things that right? Here's how that, it's okay, because it feels so, sometimes you feel so alone, right? That's, again, it's that nobody understands. I'm gonna like come into myself and just not be, sort of hide from the world. But everybody in this town, to some degree or another, is going through this. Everybody in this town understands what they're going with, and even people who are not here, like just the impact that this has had across the province, across the country, across the world. It just, it's amazing the amount of goodwill that people have for Tumbler Ridge. At the same time, there's also this sense that people are forgetting, right? Oh, you're from Tumbler Ridge. Tumbler Ridge, that sounds familiar. Oh, isn't that place where, right? And that's not a bad thing either. One of the things that happened after the shooting was the town was nominated to be for Craft Hockeyville. And we came in second place. And I talked to some people after we got second place, and they were like, "Yay, we got second place!" Because it was like, I don't know that I could do that again. I couldn't do that media circus, all the attention that's focused on Tumbler Ridge, all the people who were like in town. This gave us something to work for. It gave us a sense of pride. It gave us something to focus on outside of ourselves, a chance to come together as a community. But at the same time, it was also to go to the next step might have been a little too much for people.
Let me tell you about Tumbler Ridge, which I have called Canada's hidden gem for over a decade. This place was put on my bucket list, and despite multiple visits, it's still there. We've fished there, choosing between gloriously beautiful rivers or lakes. We've hiked there, including the Unreal, Shipyards and Titanic Trail, which takes you through incredible stone formations and mountain views that make your heart skip beats. We wandered above and down below the 70-meter Canuso Falls and another half-dozen waterfalls nearby. It's a spot you can go for short hikes and see many waterfalls tucked into wilderness. We've put our hands and feet in dinosaur foot tracks along the rivers and touched fossils in their museum. We have sat and just soaked in the view for hours as time stood still. It's a bit of a trip to get to Tumbler Ridge, and absolutely worth every minute once you get there. I beg you, put Tumbler Ridge on your bucket list and send me the stories and images of your adventures. Learn more at www.visittumblerridge.ca. This was not a paid advertisement, just me sharing my love of Tumbler.
And so I want to go back to that influx of people. what did you see? What types of organizations, and what kind of, you mentioned it's about 2,500 population. What do you think the population grew to at its peak?
It was probably at its peak. So the peak was when the Prime Minister and the leaders of all the parties came to town for a vigil. And at the time, I mean, there were probably 200, 300, 400 extra people. Some of them were people from surrounding communities come to support Tumbler Ridge.
Yeah.
Some of them were people who used to live here who came back to give good words and support the town.
Yeah.
A lot of reporters, and a lot of support workers, right? I mentioned all the people who had come to town. There were probably, I think, 10 at its peak counselors in the community center. But that day there was somebody showed up with a pair of emotional support horses, and as I was walking over to the community center after the vigil, here's just a couple of horses.
Yeah.
Want to come pet a horse? Sure.
Yeah.
They were just in town again a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, there was definitely a sense of everybody. There were a few. I posted, so there were the people who were killed, and then there was this other group that people always ask about. There was, in the original press release, it was like there was 25 or 27 kids who were treated at the hospital.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, did they get shot? Well, no, they were like, oh, I jumped over a desk and bruised my arm or something like that. There were, but there were two other kids that got shot that didn't die. One of which was she recovered in about a week and came home.
Yeah.
The other, Maya Gebela, is still in Children's Hospital down in Vancouver, and slowly recovering. Her mom just posted a picture. So she's basically one side is almost like she's paralyzed.
Yeah.
But her mother posted a picture yesterday or the day before, and her off eye was just slightly open, and everybody was like, "Oh, I can see an eye," and right, and everybody's like this. But every once in a while, there's somebody, like when this first happened, somebody posted, "Just let her die."
Yeah.
Right, and stuff like that, and some really distasteful stuff.
Yeah.
So for the first week, 10 days, probably had to block 30 or 40 people on the Facebook page. But at the same time, there's 3,000, 4,000 who are there, just wanting to know what the information is, wanting the latest information.
Yeah.
Just wanting to support these people. So
yeah.
Now the issue has actually become fake news and AI generated slop.
Yeah.
A week or so ago, there was this story about 8-year-old was clinically dead, then made miraculous recovery, and I'm like, okay, so she's 12.
Yeah.
She wasn't clinically dead. They weren't in the operating room in Tumbler Ridge because there is no operating room in Tumbler Ridge.
Yeah.
They did not have to, she was not shot, in the chest and cavity.
Yeah.
She got hit in the throat and the head. Right? All these like wildly inaccurate bits of information.
Yeah.
As people are trying to use this as a way to sell advertising, make money, become more popular.
It's just gross.
Yeah, and it's really annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, tell me, like, what's a message that you would send out to the wider world about what you've learned from this incident so far? and maybe if there's something that you'd like to see different.
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that you're stronger than you think. And not just for me personally, because one of my friends took care of one of the victims for 6 months. I'm not directly related. Like I knew two of the kids to be able to say hi to on the street, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not that intimately connected with the people, but watching my friends as they work through this, yeah, it sucks, it's hard, but you can get through it. They say time heals wounds. I don't know that time is the only factor. I know people who've had tragedy 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it still lives with them.
Yeah.
So time isn't the only factor. There is definitely a sense where you need to be able to work through it. Usually that means talking to people, and
Yeah.
that in itself can be hard. And it's okay to cry, to mourn. I mean, here we are 3 months after the fact, and I've done this interview on the edge of tears all the way through, because even though it's it didn't directly affect me, it directly affected the people that I care about and the community that I care about, and so I still feel grief and loss for the people that I know and the people that love the people that were killed. And there was a 13th birthday party for one of the victims, and I was there, and so people were telling stories like, oh, he was this, he was that, he always had this great smile, and there was this friend of the family who got up and was talking about how she had made a chocolate cake for his mother, and Abel, oh, he loved his food, but so she's like, okay, here's his cake for your mom, can you bring it to her? Well, yeah, sure. Talked to his mom a couple days later, said, what did you think of the cake? And it's like, what cake? The cake that I sent you. You didn't send me cake. I said, well, it's like, did you eat the cake? Oh, yes, I did. Oh, it was so good. And everybody's laughing, and it was just such a, sort of, because, all the people, yes, he loved his food. He was, but he was, honest as the day is long. So yes, I totally ate it. And and he had this smile, and she's like, oh, okay. So I will make you, can you make me more cake, Auntie? It's like, yeah, okay. And then she stops and says, you never got a chance to. And just that sort of just kind of goes, it's sort of like,
Yeah.
and it's like, and you're sort of like, oh.
I've never done this type of event. But I've had the unfortunate, I'm from Nova Scotia. I woke up that morning of the Nova Scotia shooting. Still a little hard to say this, but and a friend of mine informed me that the shooter is somebody that we knew.
Okay.
And somebody, I didn't know him well, but and then a short time later started to get an understanding of the people, and I realized I knew some of the people that were victims, and so we, that wasn't an event I was involved in, but it's one that hit very close to home, just like this one does, given that we had such a close tie to this community in our time living in Grand Prairie and visiting here. And I think you have such an important job as all the journalists and then all the communicators and so on. And we capture these stories and make sense of them.
Yeah.
And piece them together so that other people can feel and understand them as best they can.
Yeah.
And I just want to commend you for the incredible work you've done through this tragedy. It's very difficult work. And on that note, I'm wondering if you have any sort of thing that you've learned so far, any lesson that you've kind of would like to share that would help others that may get into that position, and how you kind of go through hour by hour and day by day to continue doing this important work.
So for me, and it's going to be different for everybody, but for me, I have a pile of metaphorical hats. So because I got into newspaper business by doing photography and writing, I'm also a photographer. So I have this photographer hat that I put on and I go, hey, how's it going? All right, smile, dance, laugh, hey, yeah. Right? And then you take that hat off and you put on your reporter's hat, and there's this sense of that allows me to compartmentalize things a little bit, to be able to sort of go, okay, so I've got my reporter hat on. I can now talk to you without becoming a blubbery mess. Like here you're talking to me, and I'm just on the edge of tears all the time from this. But if I were like talking to you in the reverse, and I had my reporter hat on and not the community member hat on, it would be different, because I would be able to have that little compartmental. It doesn't mean that I'm going to live there all my life. It doesn't mean that this is the only part of my personality that exists. But it allows me to work through those situations. I also do, as part of my job, I also need first aid training.
Yeah.
And so, when you do the training, it's like, oh, look, here's a severed foot. And it's like, okay, but when you're doing that first aid thing, you put on your first aid attendant hat, and you're able to sort of work through things that way too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that that's a profound insight for the rest of the world, but it's one of the things that kind of allows me to work through this, by being able to say, okay, I'm Trent the reporter, and I can interface with people on that level.
Yeah.
Whereas as I'm Trent the human being.
Yeah, and it's I think that's it's a great way of putting it. You do compartmentalize, and you have a role.
Yeah.
You have a job, and you focus in on that job for that time, and then you shift into what's next, right? And what's needed next.
And I will say, for that first week, I could not do that job. I could not write anything. And I suppose I might have been able to sit down and power through, but I found that what I really wanted to do, or what I was doing, was I was getting onto Facebook and live streaming, and just talking to people, answering questions. There's the RCMP is doing a press conference, so let's go watch this, and then let's talk about it. I actually, the memorial issue, the one that came out right afterwards, it's 90% written by a friend of mine who lives in Chetwynd, who used to run the paper there. So almost all that I wrote for that one was the editorial.
Yeah.
Because that one I wrote like a week later, and by that time I was like, okay, I'm good. But yeah, it's hard when you're going through that, but it's also okay.
Yeah. And so, My last question to you before we get to the final little bit is, you've had a lot of interaction with the families. I've gotten that sense from you in our conversations. How have you navigated that with the families?
Well, like I say, I haven't actually done a lot. I've done some, but I have been very much, like I say, if you want to come talk to me, that's your prerogative. So I mentioned that I wear a photographer's hat. So I've been to 2 of the funerals as a photographer, specifically to document it as a photographer. For one of them, I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna like take some pictures, just so you have it to remember. Right. And if you choose to post these anywhere, that's your choice. If you choose to send it to the paper, that's your choice. Right. I'm not gonna do that.
You've gone through these last number of months. What do you see as, kind of what your next steps are, as you take? You are an important part of guiding this community through this. So what do you kind of see, and what are you sort of thinking of? I mean, I know for you, we've chatted a bit already, and it is a kind of a day-to-day thing. So I know that there's probably not a whole lot of strategic thinking, but where do you think you're gonna go?
I think I sat down my floor plan. I think it was 3 or 4 days after this happened, because there were people sort of, like I say, there were people saying stupid things online, and I made a post on Facebook saying, we can have hard conversations. We can talk to people who disagree with us, but without it turning into a he said, she said, without it turning into a you suck, I know everything and your opinion is completely invalid. And so one of the things that I am trying to do is to leave space for those conversations, but also help people navigate those conversations with sensitivity, right? So the big issue right now is the government announced that they're planning on demolishing the secondary school and building a new one. And there's this group of people who say that's the best outcome that we could have had, and there's this group of people who say that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And trying to find ways to talk to, say, okay, let's not, okay, we have differences of opinion, but let's not form into camps. Let's not form into, opposing organizations. We're all part of this community, and we can find ways to figure out how to express these opinions without, throwing stones at other people. Right. So, when I'm talking to this group, it's like, oh, but have you considered this argument? Have you considered this argument? I'm not part of this group, or I'm not part of that group, but have you, when I'm over here, what about this? What about this? Right. How many, for talking to the people who think this is the worst idea, how many kids are you willing to leave behind then? Right. There are kids who have stated point blank that they are not going to go back to that school. And they asked them, well, what if we took and completely changed it up, knocked down all the walls, rebuilt it on the inside? And they're like, maybe, but I don't know. And so are we willing to, how many kids are we willing to say, okay, well, whatever, you don't need your education anyways, we're going to continue on at the school that we've got. Is it 1? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 20? At what point in time do we say, we've got the school, but there doesn't seem to be anybody there. What's wrong? So I mean, but it's a big issue, right? Because it's going to cost a lot of money, and that money could be better spent just in this community to get better healthcare outcomes, to get
Yeah.
better mental health care outcomes.
Yeah.
Because mental health is, I mean, the reports have not been released, but
No.
but currently the everybody thinks that one of the biggest things is that if the shooter had better mental health supports, this might not have happened. Might have, but it might not have.
Yeah.
And you know, it's hard to, you can't go back. But
You can't go back.
But if we were to put some of that money into getting better mental health support, maybe we could prevent something like this from happening again.
Yeah.
Right? So there's legitimate arguments on both sides. There's good arguments on both sides. There is no right decision. There is no wrong decisions, but you still need to make a decision.
Yeah.
There are decisions that have benefits, and there are decisions, but that same decision will have consequences.
Yeah.
And if you choose the other position, that decision has benefits, and that decision has consequences.
Yeah.
And navigating that is hard, but at the end of the day, I think it's worthwhile.
To our audience, thank you for your support, and I have another request at the end of the podcast to help Trent and the Tumbler RidgeLines newspaper. Please listen for how you may be able to help. This episode, I'm highlighting some of the places I visited on a 3,000-kilometer road trip last month, including a stop to see our guest. Thank you to listeners and viewers in over 60 countries, including Canada, and people in these communities: Jasper, Sherwood Park, and Whitecourt, Alberta, Prince George, and Williams Lake, British Columbia. Thank you for listening and sharing. Now back to Trent Ernst of the Tumbler RidgeLines.
What advice would you give? We usually see information officers in a large emergency or a crisis, but sometimes you see communicators, and yourself as a journalist and a reporter. What advice would you give them to help them perform their job better?
In a crisis,
Yeah.
Sometimes the people are more important than the story. Right? If you like the worst thing I can imagine doing is going up to somebody and say, "So your son was just killed. How does that make you feel?"
Yeah.
How do you think it makes it feel, right?
Yeah.
So, there are ways to have those there are ways to have those conversations, but being willing to have those conversations with humanity
Yeah.
and with compassion is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is a book, documentary, or resource that you recommend to those that are managing this sort of situation?
Oh, that's fascinating.
Is there something that you've leaned on? Is there something that
I've been the people that I've been kind of keep going to is the Canadian Association of Journalists.
Yeah.
They have supports there. They actually donated financially to the paper. A couple of weeks after this, they had a seminar, basically exactly this, and it felt like they did it almost specifically for me. Right? There were other people who showed up, but it was like, how do you, as journalism in times of crisis, journalism in times of trauma, how do you work through that? So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for reporters, the Canadian Association of Journalism, and just more broadly, like for what I do, I'm not part of any association, right? I'm just me kind of doing this. I'm too small because I publish once every 2 weeks. I can't join the local or the provincial organization because you need to be a weekly.
Yeah.
Well, I can't afford to be a weekly, so
Yeah.
having, if you can, having those associations of those people that you can relate to, and if you can't, having friends and people who understand what
Yeah.
you do to talk to.
Yeah. How did you maintain your mental well-being in the most intense moments?
So the night of the Mark Carney being in town for the vigil, after the vigil, my wife basically dragged me down to the community center and went, "Hi, here, this person needs mental." But I discovered actually. So I don't know if I mentioned that before I started the newspaper, I was sort of struggling to find what to do with my life, because who wants to be in the newspaper business, especially in a town of 2,500 people? You cannot make a living doing this.
Yeah.
Right? I freely admit, I am not making a living doing this. So I'd been, one of the things that I tried was to be a substitute teacher. So I literally worked with the grade 7 class, a class that was, but like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But while I was there, they did have a mental health support worker who would come to town, and I would talk to him just about things in general. So we'd talk a lot about books, because I love books, and so we'd get, and he was one of the people who was counseling that first week, and I was like, okay, I know you want me to talk to people, but I want to talk to Miguel, right? Yeah. Because I know him, I trust him, I understand him. So, and so I've talked to some counselors. Part of it is I'm kind of doing the backdoor counseling sessions. I mentioned that I have Christine der Nederlander, who's one of, who's a well-known trauma and grief expert, and she is doing these stories for the paper, and I'm using that as a way to, it's kind of free counseling. Yeah. And then we, once every 2 weeks we sit down and we talk about, what she's previously written, and so, right, it's a little bit. I mean, I don't get to, voice my things, but I get to hear all the good advice and all the things that you should be doing, and then going out and not doing any of them.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, it is challenging when you're in this phase of things. Obviously, I want to encourage you to get out there and take care of yourself and do the things. And you've got your wife and your support network, and listen to them, and they're looking out for you.
But at the same time, I am, a little bit ADHD, right? Yeah. And there's a part of that where having, like, for me as a writer, deadlines focus me.
Yeah.
So, but as a human, having causes also focus me, and I try and find ways to say this in ways that don't come across as being arrogant, but this helped focus me, right? I talked about how I was very navel-gazy, after COVID, and this kind of forced me to kind of look up and look at the rest of the people around me. And so that in and of itself has been not a good, the shooting was not a good thing, but this has been an outcome for me that is positive.
Yeah.
There's also negative outcomes, but so being able to communicate with the people in town and say, even if it's just saying, like this morning, I did today in Tumbler Ridge, what you need to know. Booty yoga has been canceled for the rest of the month. It'll pick up back in, right? Just even stuff like that. It can be, there are times where it's really profound and really deep, meaningful conversation, but sometimes it's just like, hey, if you were planning on going to yoga tonight, it's canceled.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that has, it's not, I'm not saying I'm throwing myself completely in my work and burying my head, but that has helped me. So
yeah, you're right. Yeah, it does. It definitely keeps you focused, and it gives you the, and just it's a wonderful thing to hear some of that. And I rolled into town last night and had to do the quick run to the store for a couple of things, and that was the only time I was in town. And just I was like driving around and did a little walk around very quickly. As fresh and new as this event is, it was nice to see some of the things that I always saw.
Yeah.
in this town. The folks getting at the restaurant and finishing up for the day, I actually saw familiar faces coming out of the restaurant, and so it just like I think that's I can't impress that upon people enough to try to get into some of the normal steps. Force yourself into them if you can, and
it can feel. I know it can feel almost like a betrayal when you're like, I'm feeling good. I'm laughing. I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah.
But that's not the worst thing. Abel Senior, his daughter, he posted a picture of her smiling, and said, "The smile has come back. This is progress, right?"
Yeah.
It's okay to mourn, but the hope is to not stay there. You don't live in sorrow. Yeah, it's a place where forever and ever you're going to keep going to that door and maybe going into that room for a few minutes, a few hours, but you need to be able to come out of there too and experience joy, experience happiness, experience life as it was meant to be lived. Yeah, it's not the life that you were hoping it would be. It's changed, but bring that change on to be a part of you, and just move forward. So.
How can people follow along with your publication? Tell us about that.
Okay, I produce a newspaper called Tumbler RidgeLines, like the ridgeline of a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So TumblerRidgeLines.com is the website.
Yeah.
I try and get everything up there, but it's basically a one-man show.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying, 3 months on, after doing kind of daily news. I'm trying to figure out how to get things to post from YouTube to the website, and I haven't figured that out.
Yeah.
So every day I do something on YouTube called Today in Tumbler.
Yep.
Again, it's under Tumbler RidgeLines. I am fairly active on Facebook as well.
Yeah.
So there's a Tumbler RidgeLines Facebook page. Yeah. And then as a photographer, I'm eye for detail photography.
It's wonderful to talk to you. Thank you for taking this time together. And I want to commend you for the work that you've done. We don't always sign up for these things. I've often said for me, I'm in the wrong place at the right time, and so that happened to you. You've stepped up. I have been so impressed with the work that you have done through this incident, and I've been following along throughout, and raising this community up through this darkness, and to just show that the community will live on, and we'll get through this. So. Yeah, thanks so much, Trent. This interview is going to end with a hug, my friend.
Oh. And the sound of the two lights cracking.
This interview was not planned. It just happened. I want to thank Trent for his openness and honesty, and especially for taking on the role of helping the community move away from darkness. Trent's publication is small, and he could use any support we could give him as he navigates the next few years. He doesn't know this, but I'm looking for your support to improve his operation. Outside this interview, I learned he could use a boost in equipment and knowledge so he could do the important work ahead as best possible. And I'm asking if you have any audio or video equipment or maybe services you could donate, please reach out to me. This isn't a sponsorship opportunity. It's one where I'm asking for your help with no expectations of anything in return, just good kindness. Time to help with such things as connecting his website to YouTube or giving a little coaching and support. Perhaps there's financial support to ensure his publication and platform are strong and able to support the path to community healing. You'll find these things at www.communicationspodcast.com/help, where you can learn more and maybe help lift up Trent and others in his community. Every little bit helps. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Wildfires, Floods, and Chaos Communications podcast. Nan you Stan. Hear me later.
Shout out to Naomi!
Yeah.
Naomi Larson!
Yeah.
You're the best.